cracking, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. So we gotta do some more wiring on this car. We got a lot of wiring done in the last video, but we have even more where that came from. So stick around. You're gonna like what you see, I think. And if you like what you see in this video, please consider dropping a like below. I got something feather on my head from my bird. Comment and subscribe or whatever. Just need to, I'm trying to bump up those numbers, those rookie numbers, you know what I'm saying? So let's get into it. In the last video, we got most of the engine harness situated. There's a lot going on here. We had to add in a signal ground for our knock sensor. We had to make some brackets up. And we even got a bracket back there holding that engine harness onto the firewall. So we got a lot done. In this video, we are going to be trying to take all that wiring and then connect it in here into this nightmare. Yeah. So we have an adapter harness here from Hybrid Racing. I don't know how that works. We have our OEM key ignition. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. I would rather, because I'm trying to get all the wiring on this side of the car. Yeah, we have the OEM fuse box. And one of the biggest reasons why we're doing all this crap is because over there where the wiring would normally go, at least some of it, like the body harness kind of wraps under there, there's a tube, because I braced these shock towers to the cage. So you'll see over here, we braced the shock tower to the cage. We actually had to make a custom line to the clutch master and then do like a custom hose to this reservoir, and then a big flex line that goes to the slave. And normally on these cars you would have your fuse box in the car, and it would go like, where would it go? It would go somewhere in here, right? But you can see, so the wires usually come through there. Problem is there's like, you know, a tube that goes up here. And then in addition to that, working on this is a pain, as you could imagine. So because it's such a pain, the idea was to get all the wiring over on that side of the car. So it's gonna require some manipulation. Originally there's a wiring harness that runs in this footwell, and that goes to like the fuel pump and the rear brake lights back there. So we actually looped that up behind the cage and then threw it all over there. And the idea is, again, to get all of the wiring on the passenger side of the car. Now, it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge because so this is the OEM body harness. The OEM body harness, this part, that actually bolts onto the firewall. Like right there, right? And so what happens is the wires from that side get carried from the OEM body harness over here, right? ECU sits over here. There's some, watch my hand. Woo! There's some stuff going on. Electrical fairies that I hate. And then, VTech. So, you know, in the spirit of mbas, we have to, you know, figure out how to make this all kind of work on the right side of the car. I've never done a K-swap before, obviously, so that's going to be a challenge. The cool thing is that I have this old radiator fan, and the K-series do use the same connectors as the B-series, so I don't have to fix that, which is like one less thing I have to mess with, thankfully. But the bad thing is that, you know, we have this 30-year-old harness. You know, it's 32. It's almost as old as me, and we have to clean it up because it's been in a race car for 8 years. So I've been playing with it, you know, like there's wires that are just not managed well at all. They're just kind of floating around. Things that I've tapped into and used for like gauge power and USB power. Just like, you know, I kind of bastardized the harness. But this harness, this normally goes, so all this is in the car normally, right? This hooks up to the engine harness on the driver's side, and then this side actually goes through the passenger side right here, where, oh no! Okay, we didn't step on a connector. I actually closed that hole up. So we can't really use that. This is the shock tower plugs that plug into the engine harness. This is for the fuse box that normally goes right there. But in this case, the fuse box is going to get mounted somewhere in here. So the fuse box that I was just mentioning is actually over here. We have two of them. This is my bad condition one because the label's all messed up. I can't find my good one. But yeah, and then we're going to delete all of the dashboard harness stuff because we're running an AEM dash in the car. Another obstacle that we came across was, you know, AEM was bought by Holley after Holley was acquired by private equity, I think it is. Yeah, private equity. And so when that happened, a lot of their stuff was discontinued because Holley already has electronics. So this 22 channel CAN sensor module, the CD5 digital display, all the stuff that I got when I was sponsored, that's no longer supported. I don't really have the money to go buy new ECU stuff, and like this would only sell, this ECU, this like extremely capable ECU would only sell for like I think $1,000 max, and new ECUs are minimum $1,500 for not comparable engine control. I believe this can do a higher scan rate, so we're gonna try and stick with the Infinity. But the problem is this harness for the Infinity is for a B series. So even when you try to plug it into the adapter harness that Jackie gave me, Miss Jackie, it doesn't work because these don't match up with any of the K series plugs, obviously. So obviously the solution is, well, buy a K series jumper harness. But the problem is that they don't make them anymore. So I had to find a guy on Marketplace who's selling an AEM one. And hopefully he's not going to scam me. I don't know the guy from Joe, and I just sent him a PayPal for goods and services, you know, purchase order, and hopefully he'll send it to me. So we got a lot going on, y'all. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is an old harness that I had been messing around with in my race car. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting some wires up that I used to use. I used to run these wires to a switch for OBD1 troubleshooting, but now I have a standalone ECU, so I really don't need that. With that being said, though, I did want to create as little confusion down the road for me as possible. So where I could, I did label things. So you can see me labeling OBD1 troubleshooting or diagnostics here with a label maker laid over top of some electrical tape.
To try and maybe salvage a top 10, top 15. Didn't work out. Ends up 21st, plus 13 points. Headed to the Roval. Look, I was fine at the Roval. Fine road course race here, but you know he's not sleeping comfortable.
Catching him falling, it looks like he's about to be racing in 1 and 19 and 22. We just got to do the best we can to manage what we got.
As far as the points, yeah, Cindric, another extremely underwhelming result. He needs to win. Coca-Cola 600, which was the last traditional mile and a half.
What I hate most about wiring is that there's just so many of them and so many plugs. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to figure out where all of the plugs go in the fuse box, and then, you know, into other sub harnesses and things like that, so I can get an idea of what I'm in for when I need to resize different sections of the loom when I relocate fuse boxes and stuff. But yeah, I hate this. Well, it's funny because I posted a story on Instagram about how I got the bumper on this car, and a bunch of people messaged me with things like, wow, that looks terrible, basically. And it only looks terrible because there's wires everywhere. And the reason there's wires everywhere is because I'm trying to figure out how to wire it up. So while this looks all nice, everything else looks horrible. So here we have, what is this? This looks like I don't know what that is. I really don't. Maybe for the AC. And then we have some headlight sensors in here, the OEM map sensor. We have this big guy, which I think is for like an alternator or something like that. And then we have the shock tower plugs. I think that all that stuff doesn't get utilized when you switch to a K-Series because a lot of that stuff is on the engine harness for the RSX. We did get the in-bay fuse box in there, and I think that I have enough slack in the wire to actually just make a mounting solution here as opposed to trying to mount it in the car, which is cool to save some space in the car. But the idea here that we're doing is we're trying to plug everything up to see what everything plugs to. Yeah, so this looks like a rat's nest because it kind of is. So I guess we'll start from up here. So over there, that big bulkhead right there, that's actually the adapter from the K-Series engine harness into the AEM. But you'll notice that this harness here actually it has extra plugs that we haven't plugged in anywhere yet. So we probably got to plug that into that harness there. And then we have an adapter harness over here. So you'll see that big connector behind all those ABS lines. Yeah, so that goes to this fancy motorsports loom thing. I believe this is a hybrid racing unit. And then it plugs in somewhere in this rat's nest. So right now we're in the process of figuring out what goes where. And you'll also notice in the video, I recorded me looming up, taping up some wires that I don't need to use. So there's an OBD1 troubleshooting wire there, for example. And then this one is for the door harness. So I only labeled them so I knew what I cut off. And that way, if I ever have to troubleshoot this mess, God forbid, I'll know. That way, save myself some time. But so the next day, I realized that I could basically figure out how many plugs and how many looms went to each module, right? Whether it be a key fob tumbler thingy, whether it be the dashboard John display guy, or whether it be like a fuse box. So I started going through and counting like the plugs from the wiring harness, and I started documenting stuff just to kind of wrap my head around a game plan. After familiarizing myself with the adapter harnesses, with the OEM harnesses, with the fuse boxes, etc., I realized that I needed to mount up some things that were non-negotiables, right? So like the key tumbler, I knew I wanted to keep that, so we had to mount that up because that dictates the length of the wire that you're going to need to modify, right? And then the next thing was our digital dash. So here you can see me unwrapping my digital dash that I had in storage for like over a year, and then mounting it up to the steering column. And like I know that those two things are going to be there, right? So I'm mounting them, and wherever the fuse box and ECU goes, we're going to have to work around where these things are mounted because these things have to be there. Mounting up the key and the dashboard gave me a vision of how I wanted the car to look, and then I started becoming a little bit more creative and a little bit more courageous. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, I wanted to mount this, fuse box inside the car at first, but then I realized, no, let's mount it in the engine bay. There's plenty of space, and it'll work with how the harness is originally designed anyway. So I started clearing up the wires, pulling them out of the engine bay, pulling the fuse box out of the engine bay, and making space for fabrication of a custom bracket to get it set up where I needed it. So now that I knew the location of where I wanted the fuse box and the orientation, I had to figure out how to actually mount it. So it did have OEM mounting provisions, but they were for a totally different spot in the engine bay, closer to the shock tower. So the first thing I had to do was figure out how to remove this stupid metal bracket that was clipped into the fuse box. Don't worry, I didn't break it, but remove that and then bend it a little bit because it needed to be parallel with the short side of the fuse box. And then the plan was to use angle aluminum to attach this existing bracket to the firewall.
Man, that thing looks good. So this one right here, I didn't do 1 inch and, post flow. This one, I literally just try to go as long as I.
So for the other side of the fuse box that didn't have a metal bracket in it, it had this like mount that has this weird angle built into it. You can see. So I took some aluminum bar stock and I worked my magic to craft something up.
We could bung the other valve cover for the catch can. I did clean up and I was going to get ready to do the valve cover. But then I called one of my friends and we were on the time off because obviously the saran wrap is still on here and we need to put a header gasket on as well too. Let's get this thing put back into the car. I need to put the before I put this onto the turbo. Let's do that. No mames, way. Good for me. We got oil. Alright guys, let's do this. I'm gonna turn it off for no idle air control valve. This is really tight. It's typically a feed and return system for the coolant passages. Now, because this car don't have an idle air control valve, the idle air control valve is blocked off, and the coolant that goes to the idle air control valve is also blocked off. So we have this turbo. Again, you want a feed and return system. You don't want them tying together. It's just like, clashing, I guess. But anyways, cut these to length real quick. Over time. This car idles. This car drives really well. It's sitting at about... Alright guys, so we are finally done with the turbo kit install. I have them in one of the totes in the back because that's what we're going to run. And if I can't find it, the owner of the car is okay with buying my brand new ID 1050X. If I remember where they're at. Did all of the hot parts components, or almost all of the hot parts components. The thing is to get the turbo downpipe and dump tube fabricated and with all the parts before finalization. And then when you finish welding everything together, that is literally the product of you. You know what I mean? So with that being said, guys, we're gonna get the last couple of days, and it's been eating really well because the food bowl has been going completely empty. Everything, all the fun project car has this blow-off valve, typically in black, but because everything in this car is red, we got a red blow-off valve. We're just gonna set it up on the flange, no rubber O-ring. We have an eBay EP3 idler loop pulley, no brand name on it whatsoever, and they're using this to block off this valve, the sensor that's supposed to sit here. So that's the wastegate is like the biggest important thing to me, I think, although I've ran into wastegate before without major issues. Wastegate is one of those things that I heard kind of like a controversial thing. I know. Rule of thumb is that it spins freely, and it does. Okay, if it's like a lower brand or an eBay version, and I'm completely fine running brand name stuff. I read the comments, I do, and a lot of people kind of like talk smack about my car is being cover fitting right here that will bolt up to the tension cover, and what happens or engine core or brand name intercooler like Speed Factory. I'm not knocking on it. This stuff works as well too. That was just the intercooler itself, so a bunch of
So I jumped the gun a little bit and had drilled and riv nutted one side of this angle bracket that I was talking about earlier, but at least you'll get to see the part where I, drill another hole in it, I guess. But yeah, this is the angle bracket that interfaces with the bracket that's already on the fuse box. So check it out.
And he started deadlifting and screaming at the top of his lungs. Difficult to understand. Have you ever, this gotta be from Virgins. They do this little dance. They go, give me fries with some cheese just dumped on top. A little, all of the booze. You had all these dudes taking Tylenol. Dude, I call this the Tylenol gamut. Stop it. Fuck. This thought goes deep. It's just because so many of these guys have been corrupted by thought. They're trying to be corrupted. All they have is thoughts until you finish. A lot of it, pudding is PTSD. It's what mom gave us a little pudding cup in our lunch. Gables, we like creme brulee. Hey, move. Get away, stop humping the pillow. I don't know why they're neutered, they still hump the pillow. Horny. Pain is simply a signal. A signal. It's that simple. So, it's not for me. Because you're an idiot. It's very simple. So, you gotta understand.
Hey, everybody. I remember, or some things that he might be able to share with.
Calls and this, that, and the other, and he got with Bill France. He'd be the Ford guy for 3 years.
All right, so the first thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to get stuff mounted in the car that we knew was going to be in the car. So part of that process was throwing the wiring harness in and just like kind of like spraying and praying. You know, like laying the harness down. Ooh. Laying the harness down and just seeing where everything went, right? So from there, we kind of started going in the computer, and I'll bring up a file if it doesn't take too long. You'll see in here that I actually just like, so I noted how many looms and how many wires and plugs came out of different spots and where they went to and what needed to be where. So like we know we need the turn signal and wiper stalks. We know we need the key. The other thing we know we need is the dash and then also the fuse box. So I figured that, you know, I want to get as much wiring on this side of the car as possible, but not all of it is going to be able to fit in here with the dashboard. And I do want to keep the dash. I want to keep it in one piece as well. I don't want to do like a half dash. And just because I think it looks cool. And so with that being said, we had to mount up the fuse box. The only challenge we're going to have with this mounting location is the wires for the starter, I think, and then also for the battery for the positive, I think. They're going to be hitting this, so we're going to have to get a pretty aggressive turn that comes right out of there, and like kind of like we might have to like make a bracket that like mounts up here, but it's out of the way. That was what I wanted. And then also down here there's a spot where the wires go up from the hole in the firewall and they go and they plug in here. So it's clear of a lot of stuff, right? So we wanted to make a custom fuse box location. We got that done. And then the other thing that we did was we mocked up stuff in the interior that we know is gonna have to be there, right? So we're gonna be running the stock key, and then we're gonna lengthen those to go over there probably, because those plug into the, one of them plugs into a footwell wire for the body harness, and then the other one plugs into the fuse box, which is in that mess, and that's gonna go over there. When we were taking the car apart, we actually designed, you know, a mounting provision for this dash, because before I had some really like janky mounting provision with really thin gauge steel from a washing machine. And I just, you know, I can't do that anymore. I can't do that stuff. So we have this, we have it mounted here, and this is gonna be a nice trim piece to cover it all up. But the dash is in, and then that has a connector. I'll show you from the windshield. But yeah, so wiring harness, the turn signal stalk, the wiper stalk, and then the back of that, you can see in there, there's a little connector. The windshield is really toast on this car, but we're gonna run it because it was really difficult to get this banner on. So yeah, we got a bunch of stuff mocked up, and that's kind of the idea, starting with the stuff that we need to mock up and then figuring out how to splice the wires so that they all kind of fit in the different locations. But this was a little fun project. I really like working with this aluminum, this angle aluminum, and this bar stock. It's really sturdy, but you can still bend it in a vise. You just gotta, you know, get a hammer to bend it. But we have, you can tell we were doing a fabrication project because there's all this aluminum shavings and stuff. So we made a lot of progress. I'm really stoked on this. It looks really good. Day whatever. Now that we have the fuse box in there for the engine bay, we have at least 3 different modules that we need to get mounted up inside of the car. So this ECU, I think I'm gonna put in here, like in the OEM location. This fuse box that goes inside the car, I would like to mount it up here. There's like a hole over here and then one over here. I'm thinking I could utilize for some rib nuts and then make a standoff so that this kind of floats out in space like this. So if I ever get a passenger seat in here, they won't be kicking it. But it will be accessible enough for me to get the wires in from behind, from the front, and then pull fuses from the front as well. Then the last thing is this analog and digital individual sensor to CAN bus module. And I'm thinking of putting it where the SRS module used to be. So like basically getting like some standoffs, right? Probably facing it just like that. And then making some standoffs with angle bracket, angle aluminum that can bolt into here. The problem is this side, I'm using it as a brace for my ABS lines. So we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do here, or we take these holes, can I access them from the bottom? Yeah, and then put dowels here that stand up a platform. But I think the easiest one is probably gonna be this guy first. Just get it in there like that, right? And figure out where we can drill for riv nuts, basically. And then just have it riv nutted in there. You know, it fits really snug. And I think that's the way to go. Keep it out of the way of water and everything, and I like that idea. Sorry for the camera angle here. This was the best camera angle I could get inside the interior of the car, and there's a flashlight in the way. But all you need to know is there's 3 holes for the ECU mount, and so I need to drill 3 holes and then put riv nuts in them. That's what we're doing here. All right, so it's in there. We did drill through with apron on this side, so I'm gonna cover it with tape because no one's gonna see it. It's gonna be under the fender. But the biggest thing is, you know, before it was down here in the footwell. I didn't really like that, so now this is a lot more out of the way of water, closer to an OEM location. So we're gonna tape up some of these holes here that were used for old harnesses and stuff. But again, no one's gonna really see that, so I don't really care.
I was at Road America in 2021, Mr. Reese, part-time. He drove that 33 car, and he led laps. That was one of his first Cup starts. And Austin
Porsche a win to stay in the fight. In qualifying, alongside the 65 as Rocket Miller.
Avoiding disaster, he lives to fight another day as he falls behind that 14 faster cylinder Lexus from chicane. But the cars that are electing to pit at this point will obviously have the fuel advantage for the rest of the race. So with that 3 Corvette tucked up behind, the #1 battle plays out. But with the Mustang and Porsche out of front, the double this 3 Corvette at the same time. There goes the 77 AO Racing Porsche as Prio slams the throttle on the pit lane exterior through this first corner. It is so treacherous. Slam on the brakes. No, the Prio is close as he gets to the braking zone. That Porsche is not going to give up as Backler sails past the 64 car and back into the lead of this GTD Pro battle. The Porsche seems able to carry so much more speed to the medium.
All right, so I didn't record the last bit of getting that fuse box in because I kind of had to like hack stuff together. So we are getting a little bit impatient in this build. I think you know, when I first started the build, I was making sure all of the hardware was plated, you know, and if it wasn't plated, it was cleaned. You know, so there's some stuff in here, some rusty bolts, but for the most part, it's all plated and cleaned. But these bolts are just kind of, I'm getting to the point where I just want it done. So I'll show you what I mean. So I made this angle bracket, this with bar stock, and it looks pretty good. So spaced it out as much as I could with that piece. And then there's enough room to get underneath of here to get the plugs in if they need to come in. And then there's one plug that goes back here, and there's just enough room to sneak a plug on there. You'll notice I mounted it upside down if you know anything about Hondas. And then the reason for that is because there's this relay here that I didn't want to disconnect. So I left the relay there, and I believe that's for the turn signals. But the reason that that relay needed to be over there was because if I mounted it right side up, that relay would have been here. And then I didn't want to get in the way of these connectors like here, 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 and then here where OEM plugs connect to on the fuse box. And then the last reason is the ECU. You can now access the plug for the ECU with the fuse box still in there, so you don't need to pull it out. Now, when I tell you that I kind of hacked it together, this is what I mean. So see, I made these spacers, and there's washers in between each one to bring it out to make it even, you know, and it's still a little bit crooked if you know, really put an eye on it, but from far away, it's pretty hard to tell. So, especially with all these different angles, right? Like, is that straight? Is this straight? So, with respect to the dash bar, it looks pretty straight. And, yeah, it's very sturdy, which is good. That's the most important part, is sturdy, out of the way, and then we can work on it. But yeah, so all the plugs will be able to get access from behind, which is what we need. And then we'll still be able to, you know, like I said, service this ECU without removing the fuse box. So with that being said, I do think I'm going to call it quits on this video. Next video, we're going to mount up the CAN bus module. We're going to get all the wiring in, and we're going to start cutting stuff to length, and so that it all kind of fits in here. But yeah, I wanted to do the wiring first, and I realized that I probably couldn't, just because, you know, if I didn't know where everything was going to be, there was no real way to figure out where to put everything. So I'm pretty happy with it, though. I'm going to show you guys again. So yeah, that's pretty hype. And then we got our little dash, right, and our key. And then we got our engine fuse box. It's coming along. It's coming along, y'all. Don't forget to, you know, do all the things for the YouTube algorithm, feed the algorithms. I just trying to boost my followership. But I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you have any suggestions, editing, watchability, anything, you know, production value, B-rolls, whatever, music, let me know. I'm trying to step up the quality of this while still filming on an iPhone. So, but anyway, y'all, thanks for watching. Peace.